Welcome back to Manhwa Unlocked. Hit that subscribe button and let's unlock another world.
Just at that moment, the main heroine had stealthily approached this very spot and was peeking out from behind the crates. The girl realized that among the participants were also the calamities of Runabled, so there was a high chance that one of them could become her guardian. The heroine understood that if she were to find out, it would be best for her if Jack became her guardian. This was because he already knew she was Lucifella. With his help using spirit powers, she would be able to hide from the priests. After thinking a bit more, she became curious if Beatrice might be there too. After her brief reflections, she heard an announcement. They announced that the candidates needed to introduce themselves before the first match. At that very moment, the main heroine peeked out from behind a crate and noticed a man's silhouette. His back was turned to her and looked very familiar. This surprised her greatly, and she immediately rushed into her memories. She remembered Chrome sitting and saying that the holy power of the temple's inhabitants was too strong and unpleasant. Therefore, it irritated him that they did nothing all day. At that time, the heroine approached him and, with a smile on her face, patted his head. She also declared that he shouldn't compare himself to others. After all, her family was her teacher, and they, the family of the 7 mages. After that, the heroine declared that she would become everything to them. The boy looked at her carefully and pondered her words. Over time, Chrome grew up and called Lucifella unpleasant nicknames. But as a result, he constantly got beaten for it and eventually began to change. In the end, he developed immense respect for this girl and drank to her sincere wish. So this guy was now standing at the tournament. When his turn came, he announced that his name was Chrome Erickson, and he was 18 years old this year. The heroine listened carefully and thought, how could that be? She thought he was over 25, but he looked younger. The girl couldn't understand if this was really the same ball of anger, Chrome, whom she knew. After looking at him again, she thought that it must be a different person. This person was very lucky to have the same name and a similar appearance. Moreover, she couldn't sense any magical energy from him. His fight was about to begin, and she thought that if he really was the Chrome she knew, he would definitely win this battle. Suddenly, the girl remembered how she had taught him to fight with a sword. She said that one shouldn't neglect any means or methods for the sake of victory. He had to think of himself as a weapon and strike directly at the enemy's weak point. At that moment, Chrome stood waiting for his duel to begin. The main heroine looked at him and realized that his posture was very familiar to her. The man's opponent began his attack, seeming quite aggressive. Chrome tightly gripped his sword and prepared to counterattack. With tremendous force, he parried his opponent's attack and simultaneously attacked him. With his strike, the man knocked the weapon out of his opponent's hands. The opponent immediately thought about how much strength he had to have sent his sword flying like that. He was also very curious why Chrome had thrown his own sword aside too. But a moment later, he was delighted and thought that if he got up and picked up his sword first, he could easily win. But suddenly, he noticed a shadow beginning to loom over his face. By the time the guy realized what it was too late. Chrome grabbed his face with immense force and slammed his head into the ground. Naturally, the opponent couldn't react and was defeated. As a result of this duel, Chrome emerged victorious and stood over the body of his defeated enemy. The only thing he said with a cold gaze was, "You weakling." The main heroine was shocked by their duel. A woman standing nearby noticed her. The woman immediately asked if she was the saint before her. Then she added a question, asking how and when she had gotten here. The girl, lost in thought, realized that her disciple's mana manifested when targeting enemies. So, using the weapon was just a decoy. Now the girl knew for sure that this was Chrome. Also, the entire crowd present at the event immediately started paying attention to the girl, saying, "It's the saint." This did not please the main heroine at all, as she understood that Chrome most likely intended to kill her. Sometime later, several men stood looking at a poster depicting the participants who had reached the finals. The final match was to be between Chrome and the main heroine's guard, George IV. These were the same men who had discussed George's participation before the tournament began. One of them noted that it was the same child he hadn't taken seriously, thinking he wouldn't get far. But as he could see now, he was more capable than he had thought. However, he would surely lose this time. After all, there was a difference in strength between him and Chrome, and on top of that, he had a serious injury. George was indeed sitting with a broken arm, and his leg was wrapped in bandages. The guy sat remembering all his training from a very young age. When he trained before the tournament, everyone discussed him, saying that he was from a lineage of paladins, so it was natural for him to have such skills. But his interlocutor stated that, on the contrary, he was weaker than all the others. It seemed he not only didn't try hard, but also relied solely on his family. And this entire tournament was just a show for him to demonstrate how hard he was trying. And the first man asked if he truly had knightly blood flowing in his veins. He also asked if that was fair, since it was obvious he had just been pushed in here. It was clear that this wasn't true. These words greatly upset George and struck him right in the heart. And now the boy sat remembering all this, feeling sad. But at one point, he heard the saint address him, saying, "I thought so." He immediately raised his eyes, feeling very sad, and apologized right away. The girl asked what he was apologizing for, since the fight hadn't even started yet. But then she looked at his wounds and saw that the boy looked very tearful. Because of this, she thought that, of course, it was already over. The main heroine understood that her life depended on this, so she had to encourage him to win. But she could see that he was having such a hard time even before she had said anything. George, continuing to cry, declared that he really wanted to show everyone his abilities. He also wanted to prove that he was even better than he might seem. This situation was quite familiar to the heroine, and she realized she had experienced something similar once. Having had enough, the girl remembered her past life and a situation with her teacher. Back then, the girl stood crying and apologizing to the man. She said that this time she really wanted everything to work out. Since she had made a mistake with her magic, the books and the teacher he cherished were simply destroyed. The old man held the last piece of a book in his hands, but said nothing and didn't even scold the girl. Then he turned to her and asked if she knew the meaning of the name he had given her. The heroine listened to him attentively, and the old man placed his hand on her head. He then declared that her infinite magic was like the morning sun, like the moon that disappears and reappears. That's why her name, Lucifella, meant light. The teacher hoped she would never know sorrow and would always be happy. Sometime after that, her teacher was killed, and the girl was in the crowd of those who saw it all. The last thing her teacher said then was that he was very glad the girl hadn't been harmed in any way. Remembering all this, the heroine felt very sad. The girl immediately went up to George, placed her hand on his head, and stroked it. The boy immediately asked why the saint was doing that. The heroine told him he had done excellent work and called him her knight. The girl also noted that he was still a child and would have plenty of time and many more chances. She asked, so what if he didn't succeed now? It meant that while a person lives, they encounter both luck and failure. With a smile on her face, she also said that he tried very hard, and that was enough. The guy immediately cried out the saint's name at the top of his lungs and hugged the girl very tightly. And as a result, he cried even more heavily. The heroine immediately thought that he had scared her with all this. She then said that he was crying so hard, apparently having held it all in for a long time. At the same time, the heroine understood that the temple was definitely her enemy, but perhaps, due to strong attachment, she couldn't be cruel to him. The girl also understood that the reason for this might be that she was familiar with these feelings in her past life as well. Just like this boy, she sometimes stood before her teacher with tears in her eyes. After some time, the heroine channeled her holy power into the boy's body. She also told George to keep it a secret from others that she had healed him with her divine power, all because she didn't want to hear that he lost just because of an injury. Therefore, he had to fight so that he would have no regrets later. The boy immediately accepted this as an order and agreed. The heroine looked at him and thought that he had recovered his spirits quickly. Then George said he would escort the girl to her bedroom, but she said it wasn't necessary. She had come alone on purpose and would return alone just the same. George thought that at times like these, the saint looked and acted like an adult. Then he addressed her and expressed his immense gratitude. But the girl, with a smile, said she would accept his gratitude after his victory. Immediately after that, she left, leaving the boy alone with his thoughts. She then started wandering the corridors. She thought she had said she knew the way and would get there by herself, but she had used a flow of divine power. She was so tired from using it. But suddenly, the heroine noticed a woman walking. It was Maria. She looked quite worried and was wondering where the saint had disappeared to this time. The heroine saw her and immediately wanted to call out. Just as she was about to say she was there, a strange male silhouette appeared and grabbed her. When Maria looked towards the sound the girl had managed to make, there was nothing there. The heroine kept trying to break free from this mysterious stranger. He, in turn, held her mouth closed and told her to shut it herself. The girl thought, was this one of the assassins who were constantly coming for her? She also didn't understand how he had managed to sneak in here, as she hadn't sensed him. Then she realized she needed to act and immediately bit the stranger's hand. From the unbearable pain, the attacker had no choice but to let the girl go. At the same time, he called her a petty brat. The girl immediately thought that until now, the assassin's energy had been very vivid, and she noticed their appearance immediately. After that, the heroine turned to him and used her divine power, which burst out from within her. The guy noticed this and thought it was glowing like a hot skillet. The girl knew that no matter how skilled an assassin was, when faced with divine power, they would have no choice but to surrender. But time passed, and she saw that the man standing opposite her was completely unaffected. She wondered why nothing had happened to him. Her used power should have made him fall long ago. The main heroine didn't understand. Were there really people who could withstand an attack with divine power? But she thought about it and realized that only one kind of people could withstand it. At that very moment, the mysterious stranger was already trying to grab her. Unfortunately for the girl, he succeeded and immediately pinned her to the ground. He stated that he now understood how she had been dealing with the other assassins all this time. With her last strength, the heroine asked if he was really a priest. But the attacker didn't listen and said that if it weren't for her, the temple would have been in their hands long ago. Then he added that it didn't matter and immediately drew his weapon to kill the saint. The heroine thought that she had already used a lot of divine power and now had no strength left to resist. The attacker declared it was time to end this, because here and now the unfortunate saint would tragically meet her end. But as he spoke, a man's figure appeared behind him, swinging at him. A blow landed, and the attacker immediately collapsed to the ground. The heroine immediately got up and saw that the person was Chrome. After that, they looked at each other for a few seconds. Chrome crouched near the girl and said that it was really inconvenient for the saint. The main heroine immediately asked what he meant by that. The man, in turn, asked why she had become such a little girl and called her Lucifella. The main heroine recalled her past life again. Back then, they were playing chess, and the girl said she didn't believe in love. After all, even those who swore they would give her the whole world and those who promised to love her in the next life didn't recognize her when she was reborn. After that, she declared that it was all just lies. Then she raised her eyes and saw the boy's strange expression. She asked why he looked so gloomy and if something was wrong. But Chrome, in turn, asked how he could be cheerful after hearing such a sad story. He also said that under no circumstances would he make the same mistake as the people in that story. The heroine was surprised then, and thought that seeing such a serious reaction from the kid to a light conversation had thrown her off balance a little. And now, when Chrome appeared before her for the first time in all this time, she remembered that story. She thought that even Jack, using spirit powers, hadn't recognized her, just like the best mages couldn't. Her interlocutor kept asking Lucifella why she was in such a form. The heroine immediately asked what he was talking about. The man, not expecting such a reaction, looked at her carefully. Then he asked if she really didn't remember anything. The girl started processing all this in her head. She thought she needed to think carefully about everything. After all, she couldn't show her confusion about him recognizing her. If he became convinced that she was really Lucifella, he would try to take her with him right away. In the worst-case scenario, he might try to start a war. And the city at the epicenter of the war could not be saved then. and they could say goodbye forever to the forbidden magic hidden in this city. The girl understood that she absolutely could not lose something so valuable. She decided to act on her own. She put on a very cute expression and said that she was just very scared and almost cried. So, she thought she needed to pretend she knew nothing. Then she said that if the knight hadn't saved her, she would probably have gotten hurt. Chrome, hearing such an answer, was completely unprepared for it. Therefore, after hearing her words, his stony face was simply shocked. The girl thought that if one looked at this freezing and trembling atmosphere, if it were magnetic, the whole area would have been frozen solid long ago. And while the main heroine and the man were talking sweetly, Maria, who had been looking for the girl all this time, appeared. The woman noticed the man there and rushed over. She also noticed the saint sitting there and asked her what was happening. The main heroine saw her and immediately called her by name. Maria ran up to the girl and started examining her thoroughly. She also said that she was hurt and wondered what had happened to her and if it was something dangerous. The little girl immediately said she was fine and that the man standing nearby had saved her. At that moment, Chrome joined their conversation. He told the woman that it seemed someone from the temple's inhabitants was trying to kill the saint. This person was now unconscious, so if they interrogated him, they could find their leader. The woman said she understood Chrome well. She added that she was sincerely grateful to him for saving the saint's life. He looked at the saint once more and apologized, saying he needed to leave. Sometime after all this, Maria went to the Holy Father. She told him there had been an attempt on the saint's life. The old man asked how such a thing could happen. His interlocutor said the saint was now safe, but they still hadn't found the main suspect. The woman now thought the tournament final should be postponed. Bachman agreed, saying it was indeed correct to suspend all activities until they found the main enemy. But suddenly, the main heroine appeared, addressing Bachman and Maria. She said she was fine and asked them to hold the final at the originally planned time. The Holy Father tried to persuade the girl otherwise, but she kept talking. She stated that there were people looking down on her. That's why, at this tournament, they needed to loudly announce her existence. At that moment, the girl thought that she certainly hadn't asked to be reborn in the saint's body, but she had absolutely no desire to die by someone else's hand. Bachman had been looking at the girl and immediately began pondering her words. After some thought, he approached the girl and crouched near her. He declared that they would always protect her. Then he turned to his subordinates and ordered them to increase security significantly. If they saw anyone suspicious or anyone using magic, they were to stop the tournament immediately. They must not forget that the saint was more important to them than anything else. The subordinates immediately declared that it would be done in the best possible way. The girl looked at them all and thought that those who had once fought against her now didn't even dare to doubt that she was the saint. Because of all this, the heroine didn't understand how Chrome had recognized her. She also wondered why she should hide her identity then. She was curious what her disciple's true goal was. At that very time, she stood near the stage where the final battle was to take place. The crowd was ready for the fight to begin, and the Holy Father and Maria were present at the event. The heroine stood confidently, thinking that even without knowing what Chrome was planning, she would do her part. After a brief moment of self-assurance, the heroine began addressing the candidates. George listened very attentively to his saint's speech. The girl said their bodies were covered in scars, which showed how hard they had tried to come this far. So all the people here now supported them, and they would support their qualification. After that, she added that glory and blessing would attend them in this battle. And so, the final round of the tournament, George IV versus Chrome, begins. After the start of the duel, both opponents drew their weapons and immediately rushed into battle. Chrome thought this guy had a very unpleasant divine power for him. Meanwhile, George thought he must not give up no matter what. The Holy Father was on the balcony with the main heroine and asked the saint who she thought deserved to win. The girl said that if it were possible, she would very much like them both to win. The old man immediately asked what she meant by that. The girl, at the same time, sank back into her thoughts. She thought that if you compared Chrome and George IV, they were like an uncut diamond and a piece of jewelry. After all, if George had trained his skills since childhood, Chrome, on the contrary, possessed an outstanding talent that didn't even require special training. His talent, from magic to swordsmanship, could destroy any other person's efforts. After this, the girl remembered a moment when the boy came and showed her a magical bird. He then asked her to look at it and see if he had done everything correctly. The girl had looked at the creation with surprise and great attention then. He then said that, of course, it hadn't been easy the first time, but since she had explained everything so well, he had succeeded on the first try. He added that it was all thanks to her, and she had told him it was simply wonderful work. Now the heroine was also watching Chrome intently as he fought on stage. He, in turn, was also looking at the girl and wondering what she was thinking while watching him. At that very moment, when he was distracted, he saw a sword flying towards him. Thanks to his reflexes, he managed to react and immediately block the boy's sword. But he still felt a small cut on his face. George noticed this and thought about his opponent's weak point. So, if he waited a bit, he could probably find his weakness. Then the boy felt his opponent's pressure intensify several times over. He wondered what had happened to make him press so hard. The cut had angered Chrome greatly, and he immediately thought why he had to participate in this weapon struggle. Then he realized his patience was running out, and he would end it with a single blow. But at the very moment he was about to do it, he heard someone shouting from the balcony. He immediately turned his head and heard them addressing the saint. Then everyone saw the main heroine's body falling from the balcony. Because of this, panic erupted, and everyone started shouting the saint's name. This all happened due to an incident that occurred 5 minutes earlier. A girl had run up to the balcony where the main heroine, Bachman, and Maria were. First, she approached the guards and asked them to let her through. Then this girl apologized and said she only needed a minute. The Holy Father turned to her and listened attentively. She, out of breath, said that during repair work at the temple, something had collapsed. Therefore, guests and workers were trapped inside. Also, it seemed the priests alone wouldn't have enough strength to save them all. The Holy Father immediately said he would go and help there, but to avoid any accidents, someone needed to stay with the saint. That very girl immediately said she understood. Bachman noticed that the saint was so engrossed in the match that she wasn't listening to him at all. Maria immediately told the old man that she was probably so concentrated on the competition that she couldn't hear them. So, the Holy Father and Maria were somewhat sidelined at that moment. The main heroine continued to watch the fight attentively. She understood that although Chrome's skills were lacking, George IV was trying not to retreat for a second. If he were to emerge victorious, it was unclear what would happen to Chrome. That same girl who had come to report the tragic event was heading towards the girl. Maria noticed this and immediately started watching her closely. When she got very close, the woman shouted for her to stop right now. But it was impossible to stop that person, and the main heroine immediately turned to see what was happening. Before her, she saw a girl emanating dark energy. This person also declared that the saint's death would lead to Bachman's fall. Hearing this, everyone around was stunned. Immediately after that, the mysterious girl pushed the child, causing her to fall from a great height onto the arena. And so, the girl was in free fall thinking, "Am I really going to die like this?" A huge number of thoughts immediately swirled in the girl's head. She thought she hadn't done anything useful and hadn't even found the forbidden magic. She was always treated like a child, and there was so much more that was humiliating. But still, she understood it hadn't been a bad life. A few seconds later, the heroine landed, and the crowd immediately screamed that someone had fallen to the ground. Everyone immediately started calling out for the saint. The heroine opened her eyes and wondered why it didn't hurt. With her hand, she felt that it didn't hurt at all, as if she had landed on something soft. After that, she rose a little and saw that she was lying on Chrome's body, who had put himself under the impact. The heroine immediately thought that even with magical power, a mage's body was no different from an ordinary human's. And catching a falling child with such a body was very difficult. That's why the girl addressed Chrome in horror. He, in turn, managed to say something to the girl, which shocked her. For some time, he tried to tell her something, whatever he could. At that moment, the referee ran up to his body and looked at him. After the inspection, he immediately declared that the participant named Chrome was disqualified for leaving the competition area. Consequently, George IV was declared the winner. Then the referee examined the guy more thoroughly and said it seemed both his arms were broken. That's why he asked for healers to be called quickly to help him. At that same time, a woman approached the main heroine and led her aside a little. Then she checked her over and asked the saint if she was injured. The girl didn't answer, but suddenly they heard the crowd starting to discuss George's victory. People said that maybe he won, but it wasn't a real victory. People wondered if they had really chosen a child as the personal bodyguard. Someone said it seemed to him the rumors about this whole circus were true. At that same instant, the main heroine turned and saw George IV standing to the side with a dejected look. The crowd continued to say that such a small boy couldn't possibly be the saint's personal knight. The heroine immediately rushed towards the boy, realizing she needed to do something. The woman with whom the girl had been sitting immediately asked what the saint was doing and where she was going. The boy sank back into his thoughts. He understood that he didn't want to win like that at all. He didn't care whether he won or lost. He just wanted to fight honestly with swords. After that, the guy lowered his sword and thought that there probably wasn't an ounce of dignity in him. But then he felt someone touch his sword at that moment. It was the main heroine, holding onto his sword, and the guy asked what she was doing. The girl thought she hadn't wanted things to turn out like this, but now that the competition was over, she simply couldn't leave it like that. After that, she tore off the veil covering her head. Then she shouted that in the name of the goddess, she had not only watched their duel, but had seen their honest striving and dedication. The crowd immediately fell silent and began listening to the saint very attentively. The girl continued her speech and declared that in honor of the courage of George IV and Chrome, she appointed both of them as her personal knights. The guy immediately tried to say something to the saint, but she said she didn't want to hear anything about him being unworthy. At the same time, she thought that this wasn't a sitcom after all. Then she asked if the guy wanted to challenge her decision. She added that they had both done their job very well. Such words, as always, moved George deeply, and tears immediately streamed from his eyes. And again, she thought that she was really acting like she was in some kind of sitcom. A moment later, Chrome was lifted on a stretcher and carried away to the infirmary to heal his wounds. The heroine looked at him and declared that both of them would protect her in the future. Chrome, on the stretcher at that time, was immersed in a dream. He dreamt of his childhood when he played with the main heroine. One day, Lucifella told the boy to watch carefully. Then she showed him magic and asked if he liked this kind of magic. Then the girl asked him to imagine gathering all his power in his hand, and then an explosion thundered. Then a feeling appears, and you do like this and that, and then this appears. The boy listened attentively and thought these were just some imprecise instructions. After some time, the girl handed the boy a bag of food and told him to take it. Then she started running away, saying her teacher was waiting for her. She also said she would bring more later and asked him to share it with the others. Suddenly, the boy stopped the girl and said his name was Chrome. Immediately after that, he asked what her name was. The heroine was a little surprised by this, but then smiled sweetly. She said her name was Lucifella, and her name meant light. Some time later, the girl came back to the same place as before. A man sat there and said, "Has the great mage's disciple come again today?" The heroine said she had brought a little more than before. She asked the man to share it with those suffering from hunger. Her interlocutor said that was very kind of her. He added that he was very grateful to her, as always. He also wondered how they would have lived without her and the great mage. At that moment, little Chrome was peeking out from behind a wall. The man also asked the girl to convey their gratitude to Lord Runnebolt. At that second, the boy lost his vigilance, and the girl, using her power, appeared behind his back. She immediately asked him why he was hiding. Then she said she had been looking for him, and he had finally found her himself. After that, she used her magic and said, "Here's a little more," and asked him to share it with his friends. She also noted that if it wasn't enough, he should come to her and her teacher, and they would give him more. The boy immediately hesitated and asked if it was really okay for them to take it if they shared with them. He added that the emperor wouldn't like it very much. What if he harmed the great mage or the little sister herself? The heroine said nothing like that would happen, even if they looked down on them. So, no matter what happened to her, her teacher would always protect her. Then she smiled and added that she was also quite a strong girl. The boy looked carefully at her joyful and beautiful face and even felt a little embarrassed. At the same time, he thought that looking at her so confident face, it would be great to somehow make her happy. After a long period of time, they were with Lucifella on a battlefield. She declared that such a beautiful world and happiness in life had no meaning. After all, if a person dies, everything loses its meaning anyway. After this speech, she cried and said she missed her teacher. Chrome constantly followed her, and this made him very sad. The boy understood that after the death of teacher Runnebolt, Lucifella never smiled as brightly as she did in childhood. If she achieved her goal, she would be able to smile so brightly again. The boy thought about all this and therefore remained by her side to fulfill her dream. Destroying those who stood in her way, he thought he would simply wait for her rebirth. After all, before her death, the heroine told him she would be reborn in the best case in a day, and in the worst case in 3 years. So, she would return in a new body somewhere around that time. That's why he understood they would probably see each other again soon. Then the boy dreamt of the very moment he had first arrived in this place. He stood in a corridor and looked at a picture of the saint. At the same time, he thought it would be easiest to kill her with magic. But saints could detect magic, so it was better to kill her with bare hands. At that moment, he heard George IV addressing the saint. He was begging the girl to rehearse her upcoming speech for the tournament. Chrome heard the girl say she didn't want to. He immediately looked at her, and she strongly reminded him of the young Lucifella. Since childhood, she said she hated rote learning. And now the boy looked at her in her new body and thought that when he sealed his magic, his feelings only became stronger. But at first glance, he knew the saint was Lucifella. He watched the heroine and her movements carefully. At the same time, he understood her habits and manners were exactly the same as Lucifella's. Even her character was exactly the same. George asked her not to run away every time. Then, before the man's eyes, flashed the moment they first met the girl's gaze. It was when he introduced himself at the tournament. He was very curious then why she wasn't returning to Runnebolt. After all, there was a chance she would return and meet Jack, and he wondered if she had really forgotten about Runnebolt. He felt sad and thought, was it because he meant nothing to her? Then the man firmly decided he must take her to Runnebolt at all costs. Then he recalled a memory of him standing in the corridor near the girl's room to keep an eye on her. Back then, she was crying, and a woman approached her. She asked the saint who she was crying about this time. The heroine, with tears in her eyes, told Maria she had just had another nightmare. She noted that she was very scared because of it. Then she asked Maria to come closer, saying she would hug her tightly and everything would be fine. After that, the woman hugged her, and they sat embracing for some time. The man watched this and thought that if Lucifella was truly happy living here, he should just leave quietly. Then he remembered the moment he saved the girl, and she pretended not to know him. And he thought that just as she had pretended not to know him then, he could also pretend he was seeing her for the first time. After all this came the moment the guy tried to save the girl from certain death. Back then, he caught her with his body and was severely injured. The girl wanted to call him Chrome, but he asked her not to. He asked her not to say his name so casually, since they both knew they had known each other for a very long time. The boy looked at the sad girl and thought he should discard all his feelings. Because even though he knew Lucifella was alive, her inner self was no longer what it used to be. Immediately after that, the boy woke up in an unfamiliar place. Looking around, everything was truly unfamiliar, and he thought, is this a hospital? At that moment, he tried to get out of bed and thought, has the day come when I fell unconscious? As he was thinking about all this, he noticed something to the side. By the bed where he had been lying all this time sat the main heroine, holding his finger with her small hand. This brought back memories for the boy, and he felt even sadder. A man entered the room and asked if he had finally come to his senses. Chrome immediately raised his eyes and saw the face of the Holy Shield, Bachman. But then he realized that nothing remained of his former youthful face. And now, it was more correct to call him the Holy Father. Then the old man asked how his hands were. After all, it seemed the saint's blessing had saved him. Chrome immediately raised his hand and looked at it carefully. Then the Holy Father noted that his hair had also been restored, thanks to the saint. The man removed his hand from the girl and said that since he had been disqualified, there was no reason for him to stay here anymore. Immediately after that, he got up and put on his outer clothing. He stated that nothing was keeping him here anymore, so he would just leave. When he had taken a few steps, the Holy Father addressed him again. He said he had heard his name was Chrome. He also noted that he strongly resembled someone he knew, which shocked the boy. After that, a vision of the war between them long ago appeared before both men's eyes. The old man said he really resembled a person he had known, but so much time had passed that he could remember little from back then. But one thing he could recall clearly: out of everyone he knew, that person was the strongest. After that, Bachman said that when he first saw him, he had already thought that person would return, and his heart had skipped a beat again. He added that although that person should be an old man like him by now. Chrome knew that anything could be expected from Bachman. Despite his kind appearance, he had made them, Runnebolt, retreat not once or twice, attacking their weak points. He also understood that they currently had no such weak points. Then he told the old man he didn't quite understand what he was talking about. At the same time, he thought he had no choice but to keep pretending. A moment later, the Holy Father said he didn't care at all who he was, all because he had twice protected the treasure of their temple. It meant he couldn't repay him even if he gave him his life. Immediately after that, he bowed to the man and said that since the saint wished it, he earnestly asked him to stay. Chrome hadn't expected this turn of events and was a little shocked. He thought that this was the man who never retreated on the battlefield and never bowed his head. And now he was bowing it and asking for help like this, for the saint's sake. So in that case, taking Lucifella away would be a very difficult task. After all, this man was bowing for her sake. It seemed he couldn't even express his devotion to Lucifella. He understood that if things were like this, he had no choice but to respond. Chrome immediately asked if the old man had mentioned the sin of wrath. He also spoke of the hero, whom Lord Bachman called the strongest. The holy shield opposing the invincible sword, and the 7 calamities of Runnebolt, and the sin of wrath. And the man asked if he meant that he resembled him. The Holy Father hadn't expected such a question and immediately hesitated with his answer. Just as he was about to say something, extraneous sounds came from the side. All these sounds were made by the main heroine, who had just woken up. Rubbing her eyes, she said she had dozed off, and they were making such a noise. The old man immediately switched his attention to the girl and asked if the saint had woken up. The girl said in a sleepy voice that was indeed the case. She also told Bachman her mouth was dry. He said he would go to the kitchen and bring her something to drink. After that, the Holy Father finally headed for the exit to leave the room. Chrome looked at him and thought the conversation had probably gone a bit off track. Then he asked the girl if she had slept well. She turned towards her interlocutor and looked to see who it was. At that very moment, she was frightened, not expecting to see Chrome there at all. Startled, she said it was really sudden. Then she remembered in her head that it was true. She had healed Chrome and then fallen asleep immediately. Remembering what had happened recently, the heroine thought she felt a bit awkward talking about the tournament events. Then she tried to say something to her interlocutor, but hesitated, fumbling for words. Chrome took a deep breath and said he had been told she was the embodiment of the goddess. But now, looking at her, he saw she was just an ordinary child. The girl immediately asked what he was saying to her. Her interlocutor added that if this was now called the power of the goddess, she was no different from other children. And it meant he had wasted his time twice saving her life. The heroine was shocked by this and couldn't even find words to respond. Chrome then said she shouldn't try to thank him. He added that he had been such an idiot for not realizing right away what a weak child she really was. On top of that, he said he had probably overestimated the saint's strength. The girl listened to the end, but by the last moment, she was ready to explode with anger. After he finished, the girl shouted that he didn't even know her teacher. Her interlocutor immediately crouched near her and said that this was definitely Lucifella before him. The girl heard this and realized she had let it slip. After that, the main heroine asked directly when he had found out. Chrome said it was obvious just by looking at her. After all, everything remained as it was, including her murderous temper. The heroine was still quite angry and said she was still holding herself back. But then the guy said he had believed she would be reborn again. It was all because she had told him before that she would definitely return to them later. But now, he was very curious why she hadn't returned to Runnebolt as promised. With sadness in her words, the heroine said that, to be honest, she wanted to find her teacher's magic and then return. Her interlocutor asked if she had found it. The main heroine said this forbidden power was somewhere in the temple. The Holy Father, Bachman, didn't tell her about this power, saying she was still too young for all this. So, after she came of age, all the capabilities of the saint would be open to her, and she would be able to inspect every corner of this temple. Only then could she find the forbidden magic hidden in this temple. That's why, until then, she had to survive in this body. She also didn't know how she would die this time. Looking at the girl, the boy understood that she was apparently still connected to the forbidden magic in some way. After that, Chrome took the heroine's small hand and said that if this was what drove her, then all he could do was follow her. At the same time, he promised to be with her until the very end. Because what she wanted was what he wanted too. Consequently, he would support her in everything. The heroine immediately told him to stop for a second. She asked if he wasn't going to return to Runnebolt. Chrome also asked in surprise, "And where should I return to?" He also noted that if he were to paraphrase the saint's words, Chrome was so dear to her that she didn't want him to leave, and she hoped he would definitely stay at this temple. The girl heard this with surprise and wondered who had said that. Suddenly, the Holy Father entered the room and looked at them joyfully. He said that the two of them certainly had things to talk about. The girl headed towards him and asked if it had been him. Chrome looked at the heroine and thought that Lucifella was alive after all. The person whose return he had waited for continuously was now alive and breathing in this world. He also thought that this old man probably didn't know anything either. The main heroine immediately shouted to the old man that she wouldn't let him get away. At the same time, Chrome laughed because he felt joyful in his heart about Lucifella being alive. The heroine immediately asked why Chrome was laughing again now. She also declared that she would deal with everyone here. After these events, some time passed. George IV stood facing Chrome, and they looked at each other. The man said that from this day on, he was the saint's personal knight and his name was Chrome. He asked the boy to take care of her. They bowed to each other, and the boy asked him to do the same. Then the boy approached his interlocutor and whispered that he was curious about one thing. He asked how old he really was. Chrome said he was really 18 years old. The boy asked what he was talking about. He thought, is he joking? But then the man told him that to be precise, he was a full 68 years old. The boy was very surprised again and thought he was too old for all this. George IV sank into thought, calculating his age. At that time, George III approached Chrome and said he exuded confidence. He also said some scoundrels might attack the saint again, so he asked him to take care of her. The boy said it could very well be those messengers from Runnebolt. He also noted that their previous messenger had been very suspicious to them. By this messenger, he meant Jack, who had behaved very strangely back then. Chrome said that this time, nothing indicated an impending invasion. Consequently, one could assume it was an inside job. The boy asked if he meant that someone from the temple had set their sights on the saint. The father patted the boy on the head and said that was quite possible, and it seemed she wasn't liked by everyone, so they had to make them name the instigators of all this. But they weren't talking. The boy said he thought they should find out their goal. That was their main task at the moment. At that moment, the door to the room, which was right there, swung open. The main heroine entered and said that if they were mentioning Bachman, they probably wanted to take the next position of Holy Father. When the girl entered, she first exchanged glances with Chrome. Then she told him the uniform suited him very well. The man was delighted and immediately thanked the girl for the compliment. Then he leaned towards the saint and asked who would benefit if the Holy Father stepped down. The girl asked, "Perhaps Brother Omar?" In the hierarchy, he stood right after the Holy Father. George IV immediately also thought about Omar. The girl noted that such a person existed and that he was the one in charge of finances. The girl noted that this person was quite clever, so they should be careful not to catch his eye. While saying all this, she showed she was cold and warmed herself with her hands. George saw this and immediately started taking off his cloak. But at the very moment he took it off and raised his eyes, he saw that Chrome had already taken his out and put it on the girl. She said she was still a little chilly even with it, but thanked Chrome. The boy was shocked by this turn of events. He thought, "What about me? I was left unnoticed." He also thought how the man knew her so well. It was because he had protected the saint and been by her side for 5 whole years. This person, who hadn't even been with her for 5 weeks, understood her immediately. He thought this probably wasn't just ordinary care for the saint. Taking his swordsmanship as an obvious fact, it seemed there was nothing he couldn't do. Also, he was polite and strong. But now he thought it was as if there was no place for him next to the saint anymore. Then the boy told the girl he wasn't feeling well and asked to be excused for today. Hearing this, the heroine immediately started worrying about it. Then she asked the boy what hurt and where. Because of his worries, he hadn't expected such a reaction from her at all. After she asked, the boy immediately turned and ran away. He said that if he rested a bit, it would pass, and noted they would see each other later. His father immediately asked where his son was going. But the boy didn't hear anyone and just ran with all his might. He thought the saint was genuinely worried about him, and he had to lie about being sick because of his own worries. Now, with tears in his eyes, he asked the saint for forgiveness. George III, who was in the room, bowed and asked the saint for forgiveness, then ran to find out where his son had gone. The girl watched all this and asked her protector what this pretense was about. He, in turn, said it was definitely pretense. After some time, Chrome asked why the boy was doing all this or if he was really sick. At that time, he was feeding the girl cake. He added that Beatrice would turn green with envy if she knew he was here. The heroine told him that was certainly true. After all, in her past life, the girl always complained that Beatrice only liked Chrome, and he, in turn, always came to her for help. Then her interlocutor said it was interesting, because the boy was behaving the same way for that reason. The main heroine immediately asked if he really thought so. At the same time, the man thought it was probably none of his business. After that, he asked if the girl really thought Omar was the criminal. The heroine noted that he had the most power, but he definitely wasn't that kind of person, and besides, he had been very busy lately. As she had heard, he had big problems with accounting. Then Chrome noted that this brought them back to where they started. The girl asked what her interlocutor would do if he were in the criminal's place in this situation. The man immediately thought about what he would really do in that situation. So, after 2 failed attempts to kill the saint, her security had been strengthened. Therefore, many opportunities to finish her off had simply disappeared. And so he wondered what he would really do if he couldn't touch the saint herself. In his head, he visualized it and approached her. Then he looked down and saw flowers there. So, he told the main heroine that then he would attack those surrounding the girl, and also those whom the heroine cherished all this time. She immediately wondered whom she cherished at this time. The first person she imagined was Maria. She understood the woman was always in the company of other people. Therefore, doing something to her would be quite difficult. Then she thought that left the Holy Father Bachman or her guard, Chrome. But after the attackers encountered them, the heroine thought it would be a miracle if they remained alive. So, a situation where it was easy to attack could make the surrounding people easy prey. George was just walking down the corridor, crying because he was upset. While he was walking anxiously, some mysterious strangers appeared behind him. Their entire demeanor showed they wanted to grab the boy. At that time, the main heroes thought, surely these attackers wouldn't attack George IV. But it happened just as the main heroine had feared. The boy was grabbed and then dragged into some basement. It was dark in this basement, with only one candle burning. The boy said, "Let me go," and asked if they couldn't solve this peacefully. When light was shown on the boy, he immediately saw the faces of the people who had grabbed him. Then one of the men addressed the boy and said he apologized for them meeting like this. That person also added that they were a little late with all these greetings. The man said his name was Enby, and he was loyal to Lord Omar. The boy immediately looked at him and thought these were not ordinary people. So, everyone gathered in this room were priests in Lord Omar's service. Then George asked if they were guilty of all the attempted murders. His interlocutor said that murder was indeed the best method in the struggle to save the temple. It also needed to be done because of the witch in the saint's mask. The boy tried to free his hands at that time, but they were tied very tightly. Hearing such strange words, he wondered which witch they were talking about. After a brief reflection, the boy realized he only knew one witch. So, she was the one who destroyed the empire, the known calamity that split the continent into 4 kingdoms. This witch appeared to burn the holy city of Asperia, and she was the worst witch on the continent. But one thing didn't fit in his head right now. That's why the boy asked his interlocutor why they treated the saint as a witch. The man said he had assumed he was naive and trusting, but not to this extent. Then he asked if the girl really was the saint in his eyes. The boy immediately asked what he meant by all this. He thought it was clear that the saint was an unusual person. While the boy was pondering all this, the man addressed him again and said the saint was actually a witch. That's why this whole conspiracy by Bachmann was to become the Holy Father. George IV asked with even greater surprise what he was talking about now, but his interlocutor said, "What kind of saint is she?" It was obvious that he had brought the wrong child to become the Holy Father. The boy immediately thought why this person was suddenly talking about Bachmann like that. George IV said that all their claims were because Bachmann had set everything up to become the Holy Father. His interlocutor said that was, of course, the case. If not for him, Lord Omar would have become the Holy Father. Then the boy asked if that meant Lord Omar was behind this whole story. The man said it wasn't like that, because he was just a man who knew nothing but money. The moment he became Holy Father, they would get rich and could lead the squad of saints. The other members started whispering behind this man's back. One of them asked if it was okay to say such things. His interlocutor told him this person was too talkative. Then Enby said, "So that's how it works, little George." It meant the boy would lend them a hand in overthrowing his own father and seizing the temple. Then he said he wanted to hear it and asked him to tell everything. The boy immediately said in a firm voice that Lord Bachmann had no ambition or greed, as he devoted himself completely to his work. Meanwhile, Lord Omar was only interested in money, which he never had enough of. But they were manipulating him as if she were a witch. It was just nonsense. This angered the man greatly, and he immediately ran up to the boy. Then he grabbed him by the clothes, lifted him up, and pressed him against the wall. He then said he was curious if the boy would find common ground with them, but he wasn't listening at all anymore. Also, he had a weapon behind his back at that time. Then the interlocutor said that in that case, the loyal dog of the saint was of no use to them. And so, they all prepared to finish off this boy. At the very moment the man swung his weapon at the boy, a huge explosion thundered behind him. Pieces of stone immediately flew in his direction, and he was shocked. Immediately, all the people in the building turned to see what had happened, and seeing it, they were simply stunned. Chrome stood there, saying, "They say if the tail is long, someone will inevitably step on it." A couple of seconds later, Omar also emerged from behind him. Then he pointed at those people and said these people had falsified his accounting records. The man with the knife asked, "Is that Archbishop Omar?" Chrome instantly approached the boy and immediately threw his assailant aside. After that, he asked how they had ended up here. The man started untying him and said his assailant had left traces of the kidnapping, so he was able to find him quickly. Then he said it was all thanks to the saint, as she had directed the search herself. He also handed George IV his weapon. After that, he told him to rest, as he would deal with these people himself. But the boy immediately said he didn't want that. After all, these people had insulted the saint right in front of his nose. That's why he couldn't stand aside either. Chrome said, "Then excellent," and they began the fight. Omar watched all this from the side, only hearing cries for help and to be saved. At the same time, the old man thought this spectacle was worthy of being immortalized in memoirs. Thanks to the two outstanding knights, the guilty parties of all the assassination attempts were found. Thus, the incident of the attempts on the saint's life was completely resolved. Some time passed after those events. George IV and Crome were training in the backyard at that time. Crome won this fight and thought he had won. George said he was so strong after all. He also added he was very glad to have met him not as his enemy. Crome was surprised, as he thought the boy would be upset about the defeat. Then the man asked if there was another reason why he wanted to spar with him. The boy smiled at this and said he had actually been jealous of him. His swordsmanship skills were very impressive, and he was as far from the man as the moon. But despite all this, he wanted to spar with him without any regrets. Crome was surprised by his words. Then he thought it wasn't because he didn't want anything more. After that, he extended his hand to the boy and said that the saint knew how hard he tried because she needed him. So, he said they should go, as they couldn't leave the girl alone for long. He also added that they were, after all, her bodyguards. The sentimental boy, as always, was moved by this, and tears welled up in his eyes. Crome thought he knew Lucifella in her previous form, and they had grown up together. So, their desire to protect her aligned. At that very time, Beatrice was reading the news that the loyal knight had followed the saint. This wonderful news had spread throughout the continent, so peaceful days were coming to the city. This angered the girl greatly, and she thought, did Crome really save the saint and become her loyal knight? She couldn't believe the man could betray their runnebolt like that. Beatrice thought she wouldn't leave this guy Crome and the saint from Hesperia alone like that. She also became curious if they really thought peaceful times were coming. At that very time, Crome went out for a walk around the city. He stopped at some establishment, and there he remembered his childhood adventures. He was little there, and Lucifella was with him. The girl bought some food and told the boy she bet this eatery was over 50 years old. But then she noted it wasn't so, as it would stand for another 100 years without even leaning. After that, the heroine added that it would be great to be here with him in the next life too. The boy remembered these words for a long time and now was remembering them too. After all, he was sitting exactly in the place where they used to hang out with the girl. Only now this place had become much bigger and, as they thought, was standing and not collapsing at all. Suddenly, an old man addressed the guy and thanked him for coming to their shop again, Sin of Wrath. Crome immediately said that he was the one who was grateful to the man for everything. After all, thanks to him, he had participated in the tournament without any doubts or suspicions. The old man said it wasn't like that, as he hadn't done anything special, and besides, he was ready to do anything for his benefactor. After that, he added that all witches and mages were their heroes who had saved them from the terrible emperor. The boy immediately thought what the main heroine would say if she heard all these words. After all, the girl worried so much about those she couldn't save. After that, the old man said the guy was probably hungry after getting here. That's why he should eat as much as he wanted before leaving. After that, he started bringing more and more food and asked if the guy liked this food too. The old man's son approached him and asked his father if this wasn't too expensive for this man. After all, even if he was a very dear guest, it wasn't worth it. The old man said he was just a kid, and the person sitting there was very important. Crome listened to all this and started eating the food the old man had brought. At the same time, he thought it hadn't been so expensive before. It was a fruit that contained neither taste nor useful microelements. He also thought, is it for special guests? Some time later, the main heroine rushed into one of the rooms. A person was sitting there, and he immediately said the saint had come so early. After that, he told the girl to take a seat, and when she sat down, their lesson began. After the girl's lesson ended, it was time to eat. The maid said with a smile that the heroine had worked very well in the lesson today. There was also a boy who wished the girl a pleasant appetite. The heroine smiled broadly and immediately thanked everyone for it. She also noted she would eat everything with great pleasure. While she was eating, the other people around looked at her sweetly. A girl asked her colleagues if they also thought the saint was getting cuter every year. Her interlocutor said it was certainly true because her smile made him feel completely healthy. Suddenly, George IV appeared in the room and asked them to wait. After that, one person noted that not only the saint, but George IV himself was gradually blooming. After the boy entered the room, he immediately addressed the main heroine aggressively. He asked her how she could go off alone. After all, she only had one guard with her today. The main heroine told him it was his own fault for being so slow, and what did it have to do with her? The people taking care of the main heroine immediately started discussing all this, closing the door behind them. One guy said, "I wonder what George will be like when he grows up. I can't wait to see." His interlocutor asked, "Isn't he the most handsome in the temple?" But suddenly, another guy joined their conversation. He immediately said that if they were talking about beauty, then when it came to Chrome, he had no equal. Then he asked if his colleagues knew what a wonderful sight he had witnessed not long ago. After that, he told them what had happened then. He had brought breakfast to Lord Chrome and knocked on his door for a long time. Because no one opened for so long, he thought he might not be in the room. After that, he told them what had happened then. He had brought breakfast to Lord Chrome and knocked on his door for a long time. Because no one opened for so long, he thought he might not be in the room. After some time, the door to the room finally opened, and the guy thought he had finally appeared. Before him stood a man with wet hair and a bare torso. Chrome immediately apologized and said he had been taking a bath, which was why he hadn't heard the knocking. After that, he asked if the guy had waited long. He, in turn, was blinded by his appearance and very shocked. Because of this, he was briefly at a loss, then said he hadn't waited long. Recalling all this, the guy said several years had passed, but he still remembered that image before his eyes. His interlocutors were shocked by his story, and one guy said he was indeed the most handsome. The main heroine heard their conversations quite clearly. At the same time, she thought she was hearing the birth of another fandom. Then she looked at the table and asked if there was less food than before. George asked if that was true, as he hadn't noticed anything. The girl added that there was still food on the table, and she couldn't resist it. The boy told her she ate a lot anyway. It was a useless fruit, so nothing would happen if she didn't eat it this once. The girl hadn't expected this at all and was shocked. Because of this, she became enraged and said, "What is this? It's so delicious." Also, it only contained happiness, and she screamed at the boy to give her the melon right now. As a result of all this, she chased him around the room and pulled his cheeks aggressively. After some time, George said it had become too expensive. But this didn't stop the girl, and she asked what was so expensive about it. They weren't so poor that they couldn't afford such a cheap fruit. A moment later, she asked if something else had happened at the temple. This question attracted the boy's attention, and he said if she was talking about what happened, there was nothing special. So, she shouldn't worry, and there was nothing for her to be concerned about either. At that moment, the girl thought she had heard this so often lately that she was very tired of it. In all her rebirths, it had been like this. She died before becoming an adult, and because of this, her whole life consisted of childhood. Therefore, no matter what life she lived, she had no chance to grow up and gain experience. That's why she thought the saint's life would be drastically different, but as she saw now, it turned out to be no different at all. While the heroine was thinking this, she looked at the boy very carefully. After a while, he gave in and said he would tell her everything, just please don't make that face. The girl asked if he was telling the truth. He noted that, to be honest, it wasn't because of the temple, there was another problem. Then the guy handed her a newspaper and said if she read it, she would understand what was going on. The main heroine read it carefully and was shocked. Runnable was the city of mages and calamities, and it wasn't very peaceful there now either. Jack burst into Beatrice's room, slammed the table, and asked what this was. The guy asked if the articles lying on her desk were her doing. The girl didn't answer and just glared at him grimly at that moment. Since childhood, everyone said Beatrice was the best and so cool. Her parents said she was a wonderful child, there was nothing she couldn't do. So, since childhood, she was told there was no better person in the world than her. Based on this, it was clear she was born talented, and she was born into a family of aristocrats where everyone cherished her. Being the best was simply a given for her. Therefore, the girl always said she wouldn't yield to anyone and would become the best mage. But still, it turned out she lived like a frog in a well. One day, Lucifella ended up in the place where the girl was and defeated everyone, including her. Then she approached the girl and said she wasn't interested in persecuting civilians. She also asked her if she would give it up. Back then, Beatrice couldn't believe her eyes and thought, do such strong people really exist? She thought her strength was several times, maybe even dozens of times, greater than everyone else's. Back then, Beatrice couldn't utter a word and couldn't say anything. But at that very moment, she was bursting with anger because she realized there was someone stronger than her. So, at this time, Jack appeared, asking if these articles were Beatrice's doing. The article said the melon was just garbage and asked if it was really good for health. Another article said a person ate melon every day, and it was a fruit recommended by the saint. And someone wrote, "Is it really a precious melon, or is this all money laundering using the saint's name?" Beatrice looked at her interlocutor and then said she didn't understand what he was talking about. Jack said these articles were fake news written by journalists on her order. Then he asked if the girl thought he didn't know she was buying up all the melons from the continent. Because of this, its price had risen several times. After that, he asked why she was tormenting the saint. He noted that even Chrome had sent a letter asking her not to touch her. At these words, Beatrice's face changed, and she immediately became very angry. Then she told Jack not to talk to her about Chrome. The girl said he was a traitor. Not only did he save her several times, but he also became her knight. So, even Jack liked the saint now. But at least he had stayed in Runnebolt, which was why she wasn't bothering him. With a crazed expression, she said the power was now in her hands. That's why she had become the mistress of Runnebolt, and he had to follow her words. Then she said if he had any complaints against her, he first needed to deal with the documents here, and then they could talk. Jack immediately looked to the side and saw a huge stack of papers there. After that, he finally started doing his work and complained about why he had to do it. After all, he could just be handsome, that's all. Beatrice said work had piled up that Chrome used to do, but now it was his responsibility. She also added that she was watching him now, so he shouldn't slack off. Jack looked at the departing girl and thought he wouldn't bother her anymore for now. All because Chrome would protect their queen, no matter what happened on the island. But he still had doubts about whether the queen remained the same as before. The main heroine, at that time, asked her interlocutor what these articles were. She also asked when she had recommended the melon, as it all smelled like some kind of fraud. George IV said that her eating it every day was actually true. He also noted that the melon was now so expensive and popular. That's why a thief had broken into their house and taken all the melons with him. So, he asked the girl to make do with other fruits for now. Then the main heroine started eating and sank back into her thoughts. She understood that other fruits were, of course, also good, but she still liked the melon the most. Suddenly, she thought of something and immediately looked at George. The boy was standing and thinking it was time for Chrome to return to them. But suddenly, out of the corner of his eye, he noticed the girl approaching him. The heroine immediately jumped on his back from behind and grabbed him by the neck. The protector asked the saint what was happening. She said she had involuntarily been listening to him and had become curious about something. So she asked little George if the temple had reserves. How did he know all the news about the melon? The girl's interlocutor immediately hesitated with his answer. She continued to ask if he was planning to stock up on melons so the saint wouldn't be upset they were gone. Then she asked if she was thinking correctly. George immediately said that was indeed not true. The girl insisted and told him to be honest. At that very moment, Chrome entered the room. After seeing what was happening, he was a little shocked. The heroine noticed him and said he had finally come and they needed to catch George quickly. But the man at that moment approached the girl and immediately pulled her off the boy's back. She asked in surprise why he was doing that. After all, they were just fooling around, that's all. George was tearful and didn't know what to do. The girl shouted that she would get to him yet, so the boy immediately ran away, said he wasn't feeling well, and apologized for it. The main heroine asked where he was running and if he was pretending again. Then the heroine told Chrome to let her go. The man, in turn, said he needed to tell Lucifella something. The girl said if it was about the newspaper articles, George IV had already told her all about it, so it was about the greedy saint. Crome said the articles were just the beginning of the troubles. So, what was written in the newspapers would quickly spread among people. The accusations against the Holy Father and the saint were only increasing. Therefore, if this continued, donations would surely stop. And donations were the temple's main income. And when there was no income, their temple would go bankrupt. The girl, hearing this, thought that was why their food had become less, but she still hadn't thought things would be this bad. She finished reading the article in the newspaper, and the reporter was Trixie from the Beatus Diaries. When she put it all together, she realized it was about Beatrice. Then the heroine began to reflect that Crome wasn't in Runnymede, and Jack already knew who she really was. So, besides Beatrice, there was no one else to attack the saint. Using public opinion, she planned to destroy the saint. The heroine thought she was such a nasty girl, as she was the disciple she herself had raised. If it were her past self, she wouldn't worry about the temple's inhabitants. But now, it seemed, everything had changed. After that, the girl shouted to Crome to go and gather people right now. This needed to be done because they were going on the counteroffensive. Sometime later, the main heroine was sleeping peacefully in her quarters, but at that time, she had a nightmare. Someone was strangling the girl and blood was flowing from her mouth. Then she heard someone say, "What a wonderful picture." At the same time, someone asked her if she was going to show it to everyone tomorrow. The main heroine raised her eyes, and a girl stood before her, and in front of the girl was a huge painting. She said this painting would make people who didn't take her seriously understand that she was the genius of the current century. Suddenly, the heroine realized these were memories from her past life. It was a life of poverty, and she had her paintings and her beloved friend. It seemed nothing else was needed. Until that very beloved friend killed her. The heroine asked why she wanted to kill her. Her interlocutor said she had to disappear. After all, if she were gone, then she would be the genius of this century. Immediately after that moment, the main heroine woke up in her room, all tearful. Crome was in the room and asked if she had had that dream again. The girl asked in surprise how he knew about it, but he told her it couldn't be otherwise. After all, every time she dreamt of her past life, she cried alone, just like now. Then the man approached and brought warm milk with him. He also gave it to the girl to help her calm down a bit. Then he said tomorrow was an important day for them, and this would help her sleep peacefully all night.